Everyone wants the perks of leadership, but few are ready to pay the price. Leadership looks glamorous from the outside, until you feel the weight it carries on the inside. The higher the climb, the lonelier the path, but the view is what changes lives. Leadership is not just about holding a title or occupying a position of power. At its core, leadership is about vision, the capacity to see something that does not yet exist, to hold an image of a possibility so vividly that it begins to pull you and others toward it. Vision is the first perk of leadership, and it is one of the most powerful gifts a human being can carry. When someone steps into true leadership, they begin to see beyond the limitations of the present circumstances. They start to look past the immediate challenges, the chaos and the noise of life, and they connect with a higher perspective, one that can imagine what others have not yet even considered. That vision becomes like a magnet. It pulls not only the leader but everyone in their presence into a new future. People follow leaders because they sense that vision, even if they cannot articulate it themselves. They trust it because vision feels expansive and it awakens a dormant part of them that longs for something greater. But here is the paradox. While vision is a gift, it is not free. The moment a leader begins to see a future that others cannot, they also inherit the responsibility of carrying it. It is no longer just a dream. It becomes a call, a demand, something that insists on expression, and with that demand comes weight. You cannot unsee what you have seen. Once you have glimpsed the possibility of what could be, you cannot go back to the comfort of ignorance. That awareness demands action, and so, while vision elevates, it also burdens. To hold a vision is to stand between two worlds, the world of what is and the world of what could be. This position can be exhilarating because it makes you feel connected to something larger than yourself, yet it can also feel isolating because not everyone can see what you see. When you describe your vision, some may doubt, some may resist, some may even mock it, because they are only measuring it against what exists today. But a true leader must learn to remain anchored in that higher image, even in the face of doubt, even in the face of resistance, even in the face of fear. That is part of the price of vision. The perk, though, is transformational. Vision gives life direction. Without it, people drift. They wander through their days, responding to circumstances rather than creating them. Vision gives meaning to sacrifice. It makes discipline easier. Because when you are driven by something greater than yourself, the discomfort of the present moment becomes bearable. Vision also awakens energy. It generates excitement, focus, and momentum. You can feel it in your body when you are connected to a vision. You stand taller, your mind sharpens, your heart beats with a deeper rhythm. That energy is contagious. When you share it with others, they feel it too, and suddenly they begin to step into their own courage and possibility. Yet the weight never disappears. For every perk there is a price. A vision without accountability is not vision. It is fantasy. A leader must continually ask themselves, am I living in alignment with what I see? Am I taking the steps to make this real? Am I embodying the very future I am inviting others into? Because people do not just follow words, they follow energy, they follow congruence. If there is a gap between the vision you proclaim and the actions you take, that gap will erode trust. So the responsibility is not just to hold the vision, it is to live it, breathe it, become it, so others can witness it with their own eyes. Vision also demands perseverance. The moment you step into leadership, you are tested. Obstacles will appear not because the vision is impossible, but because you must prove your commitment to it. Resistance is the universe's way of asking, how much do you really believe in this? Are you willing to sacrifice comfort, convenience, even approval to walk this path? Every obstacle is a mirror reflecting back the doubts you still hold within yourself. And so the leader must constantly evolve, constantly expand, constantly stretch beyond the limitations of their own thinking. In that sense, vision does not just create the future, it transforms the leader in the process. What makes vision such a profound perk is that it allows us to touch the unseen, to pull the invisible into the visible, to translate imagination into reality. Every innovation, every movement, Every transformation in history began with a vision carried by a leader who refused to let it die. But what makes vision such a heavy price is that the carrier cannot simply dream. They must act. They must bear the weight of misunderstanding, the sting of failure, the discomfort of uncertainty, and the endless demand for courage. And yet, when you think about it, isn't that the essence of leadership? To see something greater than yourself, to align your entire being with it, and to invite others to rise with you. Vision is the beginning, the spark, the seed. It is the perk that elevates you above the noise of the present moment, but it is also the price that binds you to age. Responsibility bigger than your own comfort, because once you see the path, you cannot pretend you don't know it. Once you glimpse the horizon, you cannot convince yourself it doesn't exist. The gift of vision is irrevocable. It becomes the compass of your life, and with that compass in hand, you must walk forward. One of the greatest perks of leadership is the extraordinary power of influence. To influence another human being is to plant a seed in the soil of their mind, a seed that can grow into action, belief, or transformation. Influence is more than persuasion or motivation. Influence is energy. It is the way a leader's presence, words, and behavior ripple out into the lives of those around them. When someone steps into true leadership, they begin to realize that every choice they make is not just personal, it is generational. The tone of their voice, the posture they hold, discipline they embody, these all transmit signals. People are not only listening to what is said, they are feeling what is lived. Influence is a powerful gift because it allows leaders to guide others without force. A leader does not have to push, they pull. They create a gravitational field, and people naturally begin to orbit around them because they sense something trustworthy, something magnetic, something worth following. That is the true perk of influence, the ability to shift hearts and minds, not through domination, but through alignment. Influence becomes a kind of silent leadership, the unspoken language of integrity, consistency, and vision lived out in real time. But just like vision, influence carries a heavy price, because the same power that can uplift can also mislead. The same words that inspire can also wound. The same energy that creates momentum can also create destruction. The more influence a leader carries, the greater the responsibility to master themselves. A leader cannot afford to live unconsciously, because their unconsciousness does not just affect them. It spills into the lives of others. When a leader is careless with their words, others may carry those words for years. When a leader is reckless with their energy, others may absorb that recklessness and lose direction. Influence amplifies everything, both the light and the shadow. The true challenge of leadership is that people do not just follow what you say, they follow who you are. If you speak of courage but live in fear, people will feel that contradiction. If you preach discipline but indulge in excuses, they will sense the gap. Humans are wired to detect authenticity. We may be able to deceive with words for a moment, but energy never lies. Influence is therefore not just about what you project outward, it is about what you cultivate inward. The leader who influences most powerfully is not the one who shouts the loudest, but the one whose inner state is congruent with their outer actions. Influence is also subtle. Sometimes it is not in the grand speech or dramatic moment that lives are changed. Sometimes it is in the quiet consistency of showing up, in the way a leader listens, in the way they handle conflict, in the way they treat those who have nothing to offer in return. People are always watching, not to judge, but to learn what is possible. When they see a leader embody patience in chaos, integrity in temptation, resilience in failure, they begin to believe that they too can embody those qualities. Influence does not always announce itself, but it always leaves a trace. The perk of influence is that it multiplies impact. A leader may speak a word of encouragement that shifts someone's belief, and that belief may change the course of that person's life. That life may then touch countless others, and the ripple continues. Influence creates momentum that extends far beyond what the leader can see. A teacher inspires a student. The student becomes a leader. The leader transforms a community, and the original seed of influence is still alive generations later. To influence is to participate in eternity, because the effects of influence rarely end with the present moment. And yet, this is also where the price becomes clear. Because if influence can uplift, it can also wound for generations. A careless leader can instill fear, doubt, or shame in someone, and that imprint can echo through their choices, their relationships, even into the lives of their children. Influence is never neutral. It either expands or contracts, heals or harms, builds or destroys. The leader who understands this begins to treat their words and actions with reverence because they recognize the sacred weight they carry. Influence demands self-mastery. Before a leader can guide others, they must guide themselves. Before they can influence outward, they must first influence inward. Influence begins in the unseen in thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and energy. If a leader lives in alignment with their highest self, their influence will naturally elevate those around them. But if they live in contradiction, their influence will. So confusion and instability. The work of leadership, therefore, is not only about strategy or decision making, it is about inner alignment. The most powerful leaders are those who have tamed their own chaos, and because they have done so, they can bring calm, clarity, and focus to others. Power of influence is not given only to a few. It is available to everyone who steps into leadership. But the degree of influence grows with trust. Trust is the currency of influence, and trust is built through consistency. Each time a leader shows up authentically, fulfills their word, and aligns their actions with their vision, trust expands. With trust comes influence, and with influence comes responsibility. This cycle repeats endlessly, requiring the leader to live consciously, intentionally, and courageously. Influence is not always visible in the moment. Sometimes a leader may feel as though their efforts are going unnoticed, that their example is unrecognized. But influence often works beneath the surface, silently shaping thoughts and behaviors until one day they emerge in visible form. A word spoken years ago suddenly becomes the anchor someone holds onto in a storm. A small act of kindness becomes the catalyst for a person to change their life. Influence does not always show immediate results, but it always leaves an imprint. To hold influence, then, is to hold immense creative power. It is to shape the unseen architecture of another person's inner world. It is to realize that every interaction is a chance to either elevate or diminish, to either awaken or suppress, to either empower or weaken. The perk of leadership is that influence allows you to extend yourself far beyond your individual life. The price is that you can never again pretend your actions do not matter because they always matter. Influence is not something you switch on or off. It is the constant flow of who you are, spilling into the lives of everyone you touch. Leadership is often admired from the outside. People look at those in positions of influence, those who carry authority, and they see the recognition, the achievements, the accomplishments, and the respect. They see the summit, and from below it looks glamorous, like a destination worth pursuing at any cost. But what most people don't see is the solitude that comes with reaching those heights. Leadership brings rewards, but it also brings a form of isolation that few speak about, because the higher one climbs, the fewer people truly understand the weight being carried. When someone begins their journey into leadership, they often walk alongside many others. The path at the bottom of the mountain is crowded, filled with voices, filled with companions, filled with familiar rhythms. But as the climb continues, the group starts to thin out. Not everyone has the stamina to keep ascending. Not everyone has the resilience to endure the altitude. And not everyone is willing to pay the price that leadership demands. Slowly, the leader realizes that the higher the summit, the narrower the path becomes, and solitude becomes an inseparable part of the journey. This isolation does not always mean physical loneliness, though that is part of it. It is more often a deep inner recognition that few People can relate to the decisions, the doubts, the sacrifices, and the responsibilities that leadership requires. When a leader makes a choice, it is rarely about themselves alone. Their decisions ripple outward, affecting others, shaping futures, and determining outcomes. That burden can never be fully explained to those who have not carried it. Friends, family, or peers may care deeply, but they cannot entirely feel what it is like to stand in that place where every move carries weight. That distance creates a silent gap, and the leader must learn how to live in it. The isolation of some, it is also emotional. A leader often withholds their struggles, not because they do not trust others, but because they know that the vision they carry cannot afford to be diluted with too much doubt. They learn to master their own inner storms in private, presenting calm and stability outwardly because they understand that others draw strength from their presence. To reveal too much uncertainty could destabilize those who are looking to them for guidance. And so, leaders carry a paradox within themselves, the need to be authentic, while also needing to shield others from the full weight of their fears. This balancing act often deepens the sense of inner solitude. There is also the reality of separation that comes with success. The more a leader achieves, the more they begin to notice a shift in relationships. Some admire them, some envy them, some misunderstand them. People project onto leaders their own expectations, their own judgments, their own insecurities. A leader may be celebrated for their achievements, but at the same time they may also be placed on a pedestal or criticized more harshly than others. In both cases, it creates distance. They are no longer seen as simply human, they are viewed through the lens of leadership, and that lens changes the way people relate to them. Yet within that isolation lies a hidden gift. Solitude, though heavy, also becomes a crucible for self-discovery. In the quiet of leadership, away from the noise of approval or criticism, leaders are forced to face themselves. They must confront their doubts, their fears, their limitations, and their values. In that process, they forge an inner strength that cannot be shaken by external voices. The loneliness of the summit becomes the space where clarity sharpens, where vision deepens, and where resilience is born. Without that isolation, a leader would never fully develop the depth of character needed to sustain their role, but it is still a price. It is the price of being misunderstood, the price of not always having someone to lean on, the price of standing alone in moments where others cannot join you. It is the price of carrying responsibilities in silence, of making choices that no one else can make, of enduring criticism that feels unjust, and of celebrating victories that sometimes feel hollow because so few understand what it took to get there. The applause may be loud, but it often fades quickly, leaving the leader with the realization that true fulfillment cannot come from external validation. This is why many leaders describe leadership as both a privilege and a burden. The privilege is the ability to create impact, to shape futures, to guide others into greater possibilities. The burden is the solitude of knowing that such impact requires sacrifices that most will never see. Late nights, heavy decisions, missed moments with loved ones, the endless demand to show up strong even when feeling weak. All of this is part of the unseen cost of standing at the summit. The isolation of leadership also reveals an important truth. The summit is not about being above others, it is about being responsible for others. A true leader does not climb to dominate, but to serve. They ascend so they can see further, so they can guide more clearly, so they can protect and uplift those still climbing. But that vantage point is one that cannot be fully shared. You can describe the view, you can point to the horizon, but until others climb to that height themselves, they will not fully understand it. And that is why leadership can feel so lonely. It requires holding perspectives that others cannot yet hold and waiting patiently until they rise to meet you. In the end, the isolation of the summit is inseparable from the gift of leadership. To stand in that space is to carry both the beauty of vision and the burden of solitude. It is to realize that leadership is not about escaping loneliness, but about transforming it into clarity, strength, and service. It is the paradox of being deeply connected to many people while also being profoundly alone in the responsibility you carry. The summit shines, but its light is both a beacon and a shadow, and every leader must learn to walk in both. Every leader who rises into their role quickly discovers that responsibility is not just a word, it is a weight. Leadership grants influence, authority, and the power to create change, but intertwined with those perks is the unshakable reality that every choice matters. The decisions a leader makes ripple outward into the lives of others. They can alter futures, shift directions, and define outcomes in ways that stretch far beyond the leader's personal world. This is the toll of responsibility, and while it is often invisible to those watching from the outside, it is felt every single day by the one who carries it. Responsibility is a toll because it demands constant awareness. A leader cannot afford to make decisions in a vacuum, guided only by convenience or preference. They must weigh possibilities, consequences, and the hidden costs that others may not see. Every word spoken in a meeting, every strategic shift, every personal interaction has the potential to impact lives. A casual statement may motivate one person while discouraging another. A single choice in policy, direction, or in timing can alter the trajectory of an entire organization or community. This is why responsibility is heavy. It transforms even the smallest actions into meaningful ones, and there is no escaping the awareness that others are depending on you. The perk of such responsibility is that it offers the leader an incredible privilege to shape destinies. Few people are given the chance to touch so many lives in such a direct way. To know that your work, your choices, and your vision can uplift families, empower individuals, or change systems is profoundly rewarding. But that reward is inseparable from the cost, because the same responsibility that can inspire pride can also create sleepless nights, endless self-questioning, and the weight of doubt. Leaders often wrestle with the haunting thought, did I do enough? Did I choose correctly? Did I consider every angle? That mental dialogue is the toll being collected in the quiet hours when no one else is watching. Responsibility is not just external, it is also deeply internal. It demands emotional resilience. Leaders must regulate their own fears, frustrations, and insecurities because they understand that their energy affects others. If they give in to despair, it ripples through the people they lead. If they lose their center, it destabilizes the group. This is why leadership requires an inner discipline that is unrelenting. A leader may feel exhausted, discouraged, or overwhelmed, but they must learn how to transmute those emotions into strength, clarity, and focus, because others are drawing their cues from them. To live with that constant need for self-regulation is one of the most underestimated prices of leadership. The toll of responsibility also shows up in sacrifice. To lead often means putting aside personal comfort for the sake of others. It can mean long hours, missed opportunities, and the constant pressure of being on, even when the body craves rest and the heart craves relief. It can mean choosing service over self, vision over ease, and integrity over popularity. These sacrifices are rarely acknowledged by others because what people usually see are the outcomes, the success, the progress, the achievements. They do not see the quiet costs that built them, the nights of wrestling with hard decisions, the moments of doubt that had to be silenced, the relationships that sometimes strained under the weight of duty. Responsibility exacts a price that cannot always be shared or explained, but it is paid nonetheless. One of the greatest challenges of responsibility is that it rarely comes with perfect clarity. Leaders must often make decisions with incomplete information in uncertain conditions and under immense pressure. They must move forward without guarantees, knowing that their choice may carry unintended consequences. This uncertainty is part of the toll. Most people can hesitate, delay, or withdraw when the outcome is unclear, but leaders do not have that luxury. They must decide, even when every fiber of their being longs for certainty. To stand in that space between doubt and action, and to move forward anyway, is one of the most difficult parts of leadership. And yet, within that difficulty lies growth. Responsibility stretches a leader in ways that nothing else can. It forces them to evolve, to sharpen their discernment, to expand their capacity for empathy and courage. Every toll collected is also a lesson, shaping the leader into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Responsibility tests the integrity of leader, pressing them to live according to their highest values even when it costs them personally. It asks them to balance competing interests, to think not only of immediate outcomes but of long-term impact, and to carry the weight of their choices with grace. Still, the toll is real. It shows up in the leader's body, in the tension held in the shoulders, in the fatigue that lingers after long days, in the stress that sometimes steals sleep. It shows up in the leader's mind, in the thoughts that never fully rest, the questions that return again and again, the strategies that play on loop even in moments meant for stillness. It shows up in the heart, in the quiet ache of caring so deeply for the well-being of others, of wanting to protect, to nurture, to elevate, while knowing that not every decision will please everyone, and not every outcome will be perfect. Responsibility is both a privilege and a burden. It allows leaders to create impact, but it also requires them to carry the invisible weight of accountability that others will never see. It demands strength, not just in public, but in private. It requires clarity, not just in vision, but in action. And it insists on resilience, not just for a season, but for a lifetime. This is why leadership is not for the faint of heart. The toll of responsibility is constant, but it is also what gives leadership its meaning. For without that toll, leadership would be nothing more than a title, stripped of its depth, its sacrifice, and its transformative power. Perhaps the most profound perk of leadership, and simultaneously its most demanding price, is the transformation of self. Leadership is not merely about guiding others, setting visions, or achieving results. It is about who you must become in order to do those things. The journey of leadership is not just external, it is deeply internal. It requires a constant process of shedding old identities, outgrowing limiting beliefs, and stepping into new versions of yourself that are capable of holding the weight of the role. Every leader who accepts the call eventually learns that leadership does not simply change circumstances, it changes them. At the beginning of leadership, a person may feel that the position is about authority or influence, about steering the direction of others. But soon, reality reveals something deeper. People follow not just because of the leader's vision, but because of the energy, the character, and the presence they embody. This means that true leadership begins with inner mastery. If you are careless with your emotions, people will feel it. If you are governed by fear, they will sense it. If you lack discipline, they will mirror it. Leadership exposes every hidden corner of your being, because the moment you step into that role, life demands that you grow into alignment with the weight you carry. The perk of this transformation is undeniable. Leadership forces you to evolve in ways you might never choose if left to comfort. It pushes you to develop resilience when you would rather retreat. It teaches you patience when you would rather react. It cultivates vision when you would rather focus only on survival. Leadership expands your capacity, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because it refuses to let you remain small. It calls you forward, insisting that you become someone others can trust, someone others can lean on, someone who lives not only for themselves, but for something larger. But the price of this transformation is that you can never return to who you once were. Once you have stretched into new awareness, once you have taken responsibility for others, once you have experienced the weight of influence, you cannot go back to living unconsciously. You cannot unsee what you have seen. The innocence of ignorance is lost. That older version of yourself, perhaps more carefree, perhaps more detached from responsibility, no longer fits. And so, leadership becomes a path of continual rebirth, where the old self must die again and again to make way for the new. This process is not comfortable. Growth never is. To evolve into the kind of person leadership requires, you must face the parts of yourself you once avoided. You must confront fear, insecurity, pride, and doubt. You must recognize the patterns that hold you back and release them, even when they feel familiar, even when they feel safe. You must be willing to break habits of thinking and behavior that no longer serve your higher purpose. This is why leadership is often described as a crucible. It refines you through pressure, heat, and challenge until all that is not essential is burned away. And yet, the reward of this transformation is profound. The very challenges that stretch you also reveal strength you did not know you had. The moments of doubt that force you inward uncover depths of wisdom you never imagined. The failures that sting the most often become the very experiences that build your greatest resilience. Leadership transforms suffering into growth, setbacks into wisdom, and responsibility into maturity. It is not a path that allows you to remain as you were. It demands that you continuously evolve into someone greater. One of the most striking aspects of this transformation is how it alters perspective. Leaders begin to see the world differently. They start to notice patterns, connections, and opportunities that others overlook. They develop an expanded sense of empathy, because carrying responsibility for others awakens a deeper awareness of human struggle and potential. They begin to operate less from ego and more from service, because the journey reveals that true power is not about control but about elevating others. This shift in perception is part of the transformation, and once it occurs, life is never experienced in the same way again. The transformation of self also teaches humility. Leadership has a way of exposing weakness and failure, reminding you that no matter how much you know, there is always more to learn. Every mistake becomes a mirror, reflecting back where growth is still needed. Every success becomes a reminder that it was not achieved alone, but with the support and trust of others. Over time, this humbles the leader. Grounding them in gratitude and awareness, the leader realizes that the transformation is not about becoming perfect, but about becoming authentic, about living in such alignment with truth that others feel safe to follow. But the cost of such transformation is the constant letting go. You must release old identities, familiar ways of being, and even relationships that no longer align with your growth. This can be painful. Friends or companions who once understood you may no longer recognize the person you are becoming. Priorities that once seemed important fade into the background. The leader learns to stand in the discomfort of this shedding, trusting that what is being lost is making space for what is greater. Leadership demands this kind of continual surrender, because evolution cannot occur without release. The transformation of self is ultimately both the greatest perk and the heaviest price of leadership. It gives you access to deeper wisdom, sharper vision, and unshakable resilience. It awakens in you a capacity to influence, to guide, to create, and to inspire in ways you never thought possible. But it also requires you to sacrifice your old self, to endure fires of growth, to step again and again into the unknown without guarantee of comfort. Leadership transforms not only the lives of others, it transforms the leader most of all. And once you have walked that path, you understand that leadership was never just about what you achieved, it was about who you became in the process. Leadership is both a gift and a burden, a privilege and a price. It gives us vision, the ability to see what others cannot yet see. It gives us influence, the power to shape lives not only through what we say, but through who we are. It takes us to summits that offer perspective, clarity, and elevation, but at the same time it leaves us standing in spaces where few can truly understand the solitude of the climb. It entrusts us with responsibility, a weight that demands sleepless nights, self-mastery, and choices that ripple far beyond ourselves. And it transforms us over and over again, stripping away the smaller versions of who we once were, calling us into a higher self that we did not even know we could become. The perks of leadership are undeniable. They are the privileges of impact, vision, transformation, and growth. But the price is also undeniable. It is the sacrifice, the solitude, the responsibility, and the constant demand for inner evolution. To lead is to accept both. To lead is to recognize that the summit shines not just for you, but for those you guide. To lead is to live with the awareness that every step you take becomes a path others will follow, and perhaps this is the true essence of leadership, that it is never only about the perks and never only about the price. It is about the integration of both. It is about standing tall under the weight of responsibility while keeping your heart open to the joy of impact. It is about carrying solitude without letting it close you off, about embracing transformation without resisting the discomfort it brings. It is about becoming someone who can hold vision, influence, responsibility, and growth all at once, and in doing so, creating a future that did not exist before, because in the end, leadership is not something you simply do. It is something you become, and when you fully embrace both the perks and the price, you discover that the journey itself was always the reward.